Hi guys, welcome to another video. Hope you're all keeping well. Seeing as my last video of my 20 most boring horror movies was so well received, and seeing as I really enjoyed doing that video, really enjoyed it, I thought I'd do a follow-up video and entitle it 20 more most boring horror movies. Again, just like the other one, there may be one or two surprise picks here, guys. Now, some you may agree on, some you may not. However, I must again stress that these movies, they're just my own personal picks. I'm not trying to put any of you off these films. Despite what I say, if you want to go and check them out yourselves, feel free to do so. If you haven't seen them. I'm just merely citing the particular movies which I personally found exceedingly boring. I just like to point out that these movies they're in no particular order. I've just selected them with no special rankings in mind at all. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get into it, and we will start with number 20. Number 20 on my list is The Haunting of Bali Rectory. Released in 2019, this excruciating bore fest tells the story of a recovering American serviceman who's sent to this remote cottage in Essex, where he's instructed to monitor German airwaves. Haunted by combat nightmares, his rehabilitation is distracted by the discovery of the half-demolished Bali Rectory and something sinister, lurking there. Now, as much as I love anything at all to do with Bali Rectory, in fact, I've got the big encyclopedia on Bali Rectory. It's a fantastic book, said to be the most haunted house in England. I'm afraid that this film, it just bored me to sleep, guys. A film that, in my opinion, was an insult to the whole Bali Rectory story. So there you go guys, to get this video underway. That's number 20 on my list of 20 more most boring movies, and that is The Haunting of Bali Rectory. Number 19 on my list is You Should Have Left. Released in 2020, this tells the story of a couple seeking a restful vacation in a remote home in the Welsh countryside. Now, what at first it seems to be like a perfect retreat soon becomes a terrifying nightmare. Terrifying. I've seen scarier things than Jack and Rory. Even the top actor Kevin Bacon couldn't lift this awful movie to any level of enjoyment. For me, the story started promising enough, but soon fizzled out to an extremely dull, totally unscary mess. But one of the most unlikely haunted houses you will ever see in a movie. So there you go, guys. That's number 19 on my list, and that is You Should Have Left. Number 18 on my list is It Chapter 2. Released in 2020, this, of course, is the second part in the two-movie remake of Stephen King's classic story of the shape-shifting clown Pennywise terrorising the town of Derry in Maine. Now, this follows up the exploits of the Losers Club, all now grown up and all preparing to face the monstrous nemesis Pennywise again, for a final encounter, final confrontation. Now, I've got to be honest, guys, I absolutely hated this sequel from start to finish. I thought it was ridiculous the way they peppered the movie with humour. And I also thought the general storyline itself was not in the least bit scary and very, very weak. And I also hated the over-reliance on special effects, especially at the end. And was there any real need for all that bad language? And I'm talking about both movies here. So there you go, guys, number 18 on my list, and that is the totally atrocious bore fest. That was It Chapter 2. Please, no more It movies, you producers, for God's sake. Number 17 on my list is Land of the Dead. Now, released in 2005, this tells the story of the conflict between the living dead having now taken over much of the world, and the the few survivors that are basically left, who've all retreated to a fortified city, where the rich live in kind of penthouse apartments, while the poor suffer on the on the streets below. Nowhere near as good as George A. Romero's classic 1968 movie. This one really bored me to sleep. So there you go, guys. Number 17 on my list, and that is Land of the Dead. Number 16 on my list is 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. Now, released in 2010, this hugely disappointing sequel to the comparatively brilliant 30 Days of Night takes place a year after the first movie, moving the action from snowy Alaska to worldwide, as Stella, mourning her husband's murder, has been travelling the globe trying to convince others that vampires really do exist. Now, when a group of lost souls offers her a chance to exact revenge upon the vampire queen, Stella joins their mission to stop the evil from striking again. Now, this vampire movie really sucked, guys, if you'll pardon the pun, and I was nowhere near as good as the first one. So there you go, guys. That's number 16 on my list of 20 more most boring movies, and that is 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. Number 15 on my list is Jug Face. Released in 2013, this tells the story of a teenage girl who is pregnant with her brother's child and tries to escape from a backwoods community, only to discover that she must sacrifice herself to this creature in a pit. Now, actually, this movie should have been thrown into a pit, in my opinion, a pit of the proverbial brown stuff. To be brutally honest, it was utter rubbish from start to finish. So there you go. That's number 15 on my list, and that is Jug Face. Oh, by the way, this movie actually comes included with the Arrow Blu-ray special edition of Dementor, which was also extremely boring, let me tell you. Number 14 on my list is Prom Nights. Released in 1980, this movie tried to capitalise on the slasher craze of that time, but failed miserably in my opinion. This movie was just so dull and slow and boring. Oh. Its main fault was the interminable amount of time it spent on setup and too many flashbacks. Even the presence of Jamie Lee Curtis did nothing to elevate this movie from the soporific bore fest it was. In short, I hated it. So there you go, guys. Number 14 on my list, and that is the awful Prom Nights. Number 13 on my list is the truly dreadful remake of Pet Sematary. Released in 2019, this dire piece of celluloid dross should never, in my opinion, ever been made. Not a patch, guys, on the original movie from 1989. This more or less retells the story of the notorious Indian burial ground with the power to reanimate the dead. Now, I didn't like the way the story strayed quite a distance from the original adaptation, and the ending itself, to me, seemed rushed. And it's got to be said, guys, this movie itself should be buried beneath the soil, never to be watched or revived ever again. So there you go, guys. Number 13 on my list, and that is the Pet Sematary remake from 2019. Awful movie. Number 12 on my list is The Ghoul. Released in 1933, this pick may come as something of a surprise to those of you who know just how big a fan I am of the late great Boris Karloff. However, as much as I hate to say it, guys, this movie was not one of Karloff's best, because I found this extremely slow, boring, and not scary at all. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that this is one of his worst movies. And also, he was barely in the movie. Awful. So there you go, guys. That's number 12 on my list, and that is The Ghoul. Number 11 on my list is Burnt Offerings. Released in 1976, This tells the story of college lecturer Ben Rolfe, played by Oliver Reed, and his family, who rents a remote country mansion at a bargain price. Now, they believe they're in for quite an uneventful summer, but what they don't realise is that they've just moved into a veritable house of horrors. Horrors, that's a laugh. I've seen more horrors than a Saturday morning kids' TV show. God, what an utterly slow and boring movie this was. Totally scant in suspense. Definitely one of Oliver Reed's worst ever movies, and I love Oliver Reed. So there you go, guys, number 11 on my list, and that is Burnt Offerings. It has to be said, guys, the bloody movie itself should have been burnt. It was that bad. Number 10 on my list is The Quiet Ones. Released in 2014, this tells the story of a university professor and a team of students who conduct an experiment on a young woman, uncovering terrifyingly dark, unexpected forces in the process. Terrifying? I don't think so. And even if this was a Hammer movie, new Hammer, that is, and not the original iconic studio that made all those wonderful gothic horror movies, it still did not entertain or grip me as much as I'd expected it would. In fact, its sheer slowness downright bored me to sleep. A one-watch only, guys, I'm afraid, and I have no intention of ever revisiting this movie again for all the tea in China. So there you go, that's number 10 on my list, and that is The Quiet Ones. Awful movie. Number 9 on my list is a Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010. God, did this movie bore me, guys. It had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Not one. Alright, they decided to scrap the comedic elements, which admittedly, I did welcome, and make the character of Freddy darker again. But it just didn't work, guys. I have to say, the story was weak, and so it felt completely flat on its face. Also, there was no Robert Englund, who for me was the best Freddy Krueger ever. I mean, he shouldn't have even bothered with this remake, guys. So there you go, that's number 9 on my list, and that's the truly terrible Nightmare on Elm Street remake from 2010. Number 8 on my list is The Witches. Released in 1966, this is another Hammer film that usually disappointed me. It tells the story of school teacher Gwen Mayfield, played by Joan Fontaine, who comes back to England after suffering a nervous breakdown caused by an attack by witch doctors while working in a mission in Africa. Now, she's hired by the wealthy Reverend Alan Bax, who runs a school in the remote village of Headeby. Now, once there, Gwen finds out Alan is not actually a minister and only wears a collar out of a sense of security. And that's when the story starts to take a dark turn into the world of witchcraft in a remote English village. But yeah, as I say, guys, it wasn't one of Hammer's best movies, and one that definitely did not live up to my expectations. So there you go, number 8 on my list, and that is The Witches. Number 7 on my list is The Changeling. Now, before I say anything else, I do fear that my comments may not go down too well, with some horror fans who love this movie. But as I say, this is just my opinion, my own personal opinion. Released in 1980, The Changeling is a kind of ghost story which tells the tale of a bereaved music professor, played by George C. Scott, who stays at a long vacant Seattle mansion where he's dragged into a decades-old mystery by an inexplicable presence in the mansion's attic. Now, I found this movie to be excruciatingly slow and dull, and even Wild Horses could never ever drag me towards watching this again. A good remedy if you suffer from insomnia and need something to make you fall asleep. That is number 7 on my list, and that is The Changeling. Number 6 on my list is Down a Dark Hall. Released in 2018, this tells the story of troubled teen Kit Gordy, who was forced to join the exclusive Blackwood boarding school only to find herself trapped by dark forces around its mysterious headmistress, Madame Duret. A total bore fest, guys, from start to finish. That's number 6 on my list, and that is Down a Dark Hall. Number 5 on my list is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Released in 1986, this was nowhere near as good as the first movie, which, in my opinion, was one of the greatest horror movies ever made, without doubt. Taking place 10 years after the events of the first movie, this dreadful sequel tells the story of a radio host who is victimized by the notorious Sawyer cannibal family as a former Texas Marshal hunts them down. Now, for me, this movie's main fault was that they put too much comedy in it, thus disappointingly diluting all the dark horror that made the first one so great. It also seemed to be a spoof of the original 1974 classic, which I didn't like at all. You know, very bad mistake indeed. You know, making a spoof of that classic. Now this is a sequel that should never have seen the light of day, as it was so bad. So there you go. That's number 5 on my list, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. Number 4 on my list is The Dark and the Wicked. Released in 2020, this tells the story of a secluded farm in a nondescript rural town where a man is slowly dying. Now his family gathers all around him to mourn, and soon a darkness grows, which is marked by waking nightmares and a growing sense, that something evil is gradually taking over the family and wreaking havoc, basically. Now, I was actually first drawn to watching this movie by a guy on YouTube who said that he found the movie extremely scary and disturbing, and he couldn't get it out of his mind. Boy, was I disappointed. Far from being extremely scary and disturbing, I found the movie to be extremely slow and dull, with little happening and far too many dark scenes in it. Again, another excruciating bore fest. That's just number 4 on my list, and that is The Dark and the Wicked. Number 3 on my list is Sinister II. Released in 2015, this follows on the story from the first movie, which was, by contrast, absolutely brilliant. With the now ex-deputy, as he attempts to end Buggles' curse while the boy is being tormented, by the entities, previous victims who lived in the house where he and his family now reside, hiding from his abusive father. Now, aside from the boring storyline, guys, there are far too many kids in this movie, which may account for the disappointingly diluted graphic content. Definitely one of the worst horror sequels ever made, and that's number 3, and that is Sinister II. Number 2 on my list is The Lodge. Released in 2019, this is another movie from the newly rebranded Hammer Studios, and tells the story of a soon-to-be stepmom who was snowed in Shining style, with a fiance's 2 children at a remote holiday village. Just as relations begin to thaw between the trio, some very, very strange and frightening events start to unfold. Well, to be honest, guys, they weren't all that strange and frightening to me. Another total bore fest from start to finish, and a movie that I really struggled to get through. That's number 2 on my list, and that is The Lodge. Just the very thought of the movie makes me feel like falling asleep. Well, finally, guys, we've come to the last film on my list of 20 more most boring horror movies, and that is Brahms The Boy 2. Released in 2020, this follows on from the first movie, which was much better, and tells the story of a family who moved to a house in the countryside after their son Jude and the mother Lisa both become traumatised from an unexpected burglary. Now Jude finds a dirty, dusty porcelain doll and calls it Brahms. Then everything starts to go downhill for the family, and as things did go downhill, in the story, guys. So my interest in the movie went downhill too, and very fast at that, because this movie, guys, I'm not kidding, it was such a dull, slow-paced mess, and nowhere near as entertaining and enjoyable as the first Boy movie. Another car crash of a sequel, which should never have been made. So that's just number 1 on my list of 20 more most boring horror movies, and that is Brahms The Boy 2. Right then, guys, that now concludes this second video of my 20 most boring horror movies. Have you seen any of these movies? What did you think of them? Do you share my rather low opinion of them, that they were just bore fests? Leave your comments down below. I really enjoyed doing this follow-up, to my previous video of 20 most boring horror movies. And who knows, at some point in the future, I might even do a third one. Yeah, so watch this space. Yeah, so as I say again, that the 20 movies that I picked, I'm not saying don't watch them for yourselves. They were just 20 that I did not like. It's all down to personal opinion at the end of the day, isn't it? Yeah. Alright then, guys, as usual, if you like the video, please feel free to share, subscribe, comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it and that. And, and all going well, I will talk to you all again soon. Cheers, guys.